Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Schinder, Drum Talk TV with, I always love saying this, a first-time offender, first hazing with Ron Riddle, who, man, this dude's been around. In fact, a lot of times, even if it's someone that's legendary, that has a long list of credits, I could pretty much rattle it off pretty well. If it's someone that I don't know very well, I can still memorize, what they do. But this is the first time I actually have to show someone's credits on screens because it's mind-blowing. But first, before we go there, Ron, welcome. Thank you for making time on the East Coast in Florida. So it's 8 in the evening where you are, 5 where I am on Pacific time. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Very excited to talk with you about many things. But first, I want to pull up a PDF to share with everybody that has basically a mile-long list of your credits, not just as a drummer who's played with, of course, Happy the Man and your tour with the Blue Oyster Cult. We'll talk about that. But all this stuff that you did with National Geographic, you did with Discovery Channel. I mean, when my son Steve sent me this list, I'm like, how many pages is this? Like, when does Ron Riddle use the restroom? When does he have lunch or dinner, or does Ron even get time for both? This is really cool. A&E, there's so many different things. And I'm going to finish scrolling through here just so that people can really get a feel of the different things you've done other than, oh, I just saw Santa Monica Mountains. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, so I'm very familiar with that area. Grew up in LA. Animal Planet stuff. A friend of mine was a on-camera correspondent for Animal Planet. Just some really, really wonderful projects here outside of simply, not that there's anything wrong with, quote, just being in a band, but I love that you've spread your wings as a scorer and, doing soundtracks for different things. So there's a really great discussion there. Look at it, just keeps going. I love this. So I'm going to start with this. There's grants and awards. Like, did you know you did all this? I know that's a funny question, but
no, I can't remember.
When you look at your list and you go, oh yeah, I did that. Like,
it was a blur.
It's an incredible body of work. So I'd like to start with this. We will go back in time and talk about how you got started, why drums and all that. But I want to skip ahead to where in your career did you get the break to start doing soundtracks for all these awesome TV channels and things like that are kind of related, right? Between Discovery and National Geographic. There's somewhat of a common thread there. How did you get into that? And what advice would you have for musicians, whether drummers or otherwise, on how to pursue that career? A lot of people, when they pick up an instrument, drums, bass, guitar, keyboards, even saxophone, some brass, they want to be on the big stage. They want to go on tour, put out albums and all that. But there's all these other career paths that you've had so much experience with. Let's touch on that first.
Well, that's kind of an interesting story. And thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can remember all of it. Actually, after I got off the road with Blue Oyster Cult and stopped, I left that band. Actually, I left that band. I went to played with Stuart Ham for a while.
I saw that. That must have been great.
Yeah, and so I think that was the last one I did before writing a symphony. And it was weird because, as you know, I mean, I'm a drummer. I've always sort of like dabbled with, keyboards, mallet instruments, that kind of thing. I've always been really interested in orchestral stuff. So I, after leaving that band, I just got up one day and went over to the keyboard, started playing some stuff, and it's like this classical music came out, and I don't really know, I hadn't really written anything that was it was like modern classical. I hadn't really ever written anything modern classical before. I just stayed with it, and it ended up coming every day and every day.
Wow.
After that, and in fact, I turned down all gigs. I basically didn't. I just secluded myself because I was just feeling like this has got to be a serious body of work, to some degree anyway. And so I just went with it. And that kept on going for a year.
Wow.
And after the year was over, I had basically a 5-part symphony, 5 movements. And that, so I wrote that and, worked it up like a MIDI version of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I played it for some producers around and some filmmakers, and they were really interested. It's kind of a programmatic piece, so
Uh-huh.
it's very visual. It conjures up a lot of visuals. So um,
How did you get their ears? How did you get their attention, and how did you get them as an audience to play it for them? I think that's a really interesting topic alone for those who want to break into that.
I think it was lucky just that I knew a film producer in the town Ithaca, New York, where I was in at the time,
Mhm.
and he did some National Geographic stuff.
Mm.
So he was looking for a different composer, heard my stuff. I don't know whether I dropped the tape off or he requested it. I can't really remember.
Tell the
Um,
boys and girls what tape is.
oh, tape, right? Whoa.
Right.
/file.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? MP3. Yes, tape, boys and girls, was before files and MP3s.
Is this like early 90s? Because it was shortly after you left
Yes.
Oyster Cult, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. It was
Yeah.
early 90s. So at any rate, he liked it, and I ended up doing, like maybe multiple. I think he was. We were working on 2 different films at the same time, so it was 2 National Geographic films, and I just thought, this is great. I love this. This is really, and simultaneously with that, and this is one of the reasons I had to leave touring and being on the road, I ended up rescuing a timber wolf. My wife
Oh.
and I at the time ended up rescuing this timber wolf that was like a year old. And he was a total terror. I mean,
Oh, wow.
he ate our house. He ate our sofa. He jumped
Oh.
up on the dining room table.
Oh, good grief. Wow.
The guys in Happy the Man loved this story because, they were trying to get me to come out, and I had on the road, and I remember there was, I couldn't leave because the wolf was bonded to me, and I was the only person that he was bonded to. So it was great for being able to get a lot of work done because I never left my studio hardly, except for to go out, and I had to run him like 3 times a day because he had like so much ridiculous energy. I should have uploaded a picture of him because he's like gorgeous, and we
Well,
had a
I'm going
lot
to
of.
surprise you with something. When I was 16, hold on, let me pull this up. When I was 16, long story kind of shortened, because we have this in common, you and I. My mom worked in a beauty salon, and she called me and said, "There's this beautiful big dog wandering back and forth. It seems harmless, doesn't have a collar. Why don't you come get him? And we'll put up posters. And if no one claims him, we'll take him for shots and keep him." So we did. And when no one claimed him, my dad took him to the vet, and the vet pulled up his gums and showed my dad that this is a North American gray wolf and he's
Canines.
going to get really big. That's me when I was 18 with
Yep.
him.
Oh, really cool.
And I named him Bytor after Bytor and the Snow Dog. And he lived until he was, I think, 9. And then he had some pancreatic issues, but he was just the sweetest badass animal you could imagine.
He
So
looks
that,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, but a timber wolf, those also get enormous. I'm not tall, but at the time I'm probably 5'7" now. I was probably 5'8" then before all the kids and I lost my hair. But he'd put his paws on my shoulders and I'd have to look up at him. You know, he was really
Exactly.
big. Yeah, this
Exactly.
wide from thigh to thigh, 185 pounds.
And
Just
the
amazing
head,
animal. Yeah, the
this
big head.
huge,
Yeah.
huge head. I know. When he would
So
stand
that
up,
kept
and he
you
would stand
anchored.
up on, he'd stand up on my shoulders, put his paws on my shoulders, and his head was like, I don't know if you can see it,
Yeah.
I'd be looking up at him. Yeah, he was incredible, and a very full wolf dog,
Yeah.
or timber
So he
wolf.
was your anchor and in some ways possibly a life changer, right? Because he was a restrictor and an enabler at the same time. It kept you from doing one thing that enabled you to do another. And look at this amazing soundtrack career you've had. Just incredible.
Yeah, and I felt like I didn't have a choice because I had to make another career, really, a good career switch and be able to make money. And so, it was like the idea came to me and it seemed like, okay, I could do that. And
Yeah.
plus doing the National Geographic stuff, it just showed me that it was something that I could do. And it would be good for the most part. And, people would enjoy it. So, and I ended up making a lot more money, working for myself in that way than
Right.
I ever did with bands, actually.
I dabbled in that. And when I say dabbled, that means I didn't make it big. But what happened was I had so many other musical interests outside of being in a rock band.
right.
And I got to a point in my late 20s, early 30s where I kind of just got tired of being in a band and dealing with someone else's girlfriend drama or someone showing up late or the battery's dead in the wah-wah pedal. I just like, I'm out. And I'm sure they got tired of my crap too.
I
But
know.
I started doing voice casting and voice directing for commercials. Then I started writing and playing the music and did music for a few short films. And one of the rewards I found that I'm curious if you went through this transition was it was a whole different work environment. Like I love collaborating, but the subtraction of all that added to a whole different experience of basically working alone, which I really liked.
Yeah, definitely. And I found out that I could accomplish a lot and maybe a lot more working alone. Just because of all the ridiculous stuff that goes on in bands and how can you keep that thing together for any length of time,
That's an enigma in its own.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Crazy. So does this mean drums is just one of your many instruments and you had classical training, or are you self-taught in those other areas of symphonic orchestral music and whatnot?
It's kind of a mixed bag of things. I am trained as a orchestral percussionist.
Oh,
And I've done a number of small symphony orchestras or opera companies. Actually, when I was at Berkeley in Boston, I did a lot of that. I was in like 13 different bands at once, and anything from
wow.
which was like heaven. It's like going to heaven there. You're doing. I was doing like small jazz stuff, big band ensembles, orchestral things. And so like I was doing like 13 different bands, but I was also doing arranging and composition. That was my major at Berkeley.
So I could see how Happy the Man was a really good fit. You must have really enjoyed that music because it kind of encompassed all these other attributes you had musically, right?
That's the great thing about Happy the Man, and particularly in this version that we're in right now, because there's a lot of there's a lot of orchestral stuff for me to do other than just the drumming. So that's a really attractive thing for me. To be able to incorporate all of those aspects of musical personality, because they never really fit before, because the compositional stuff is definitely a different bag. And
Yeah.
I think of all of those shows that I did for television, it was like 750 shows.
Wow.
And yeah, it was crazy. So during a period of maybe 12 years, I think it was, that's when I did that entire body of work.
Wow. That's still a lot of work jammed into just a dozen years. Ooh, because I think what a lot of people don't think of is, wow, that's a long list, but the work that went into each item on the list, how'd you even get that in? And what was your work life like? Were you up really early and worked until late at night, or what was your routine like, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I didn't sleep.
Yeah.
I'd be sitting at the keyboard going like and nodding out, because it was just like so.
Yeah, a lot of people
Um,
don't know this, but Ron is 32 years old.
exactly. Thank you so much. It's the road life is
Yeah,
kind of
no, you
worn
look
me down
great.
a
Your
bit.
hair. I will show some old pictures where they could see
Right.
Ron with the hair, like the Dan
With
with the hair with the wolf. But
with the
your
hair,
hair has held up, man.
No, I know it's real. It's actually on my head.
Yeah. Well, let's
Yeah.
talk about Happy the Man and how you got that gig. And one of the things I remember was I was in a band called Opus One, which is a progressive rock band at the wrong time. We were chasing the record deal in LA right when spandex hair metal came out
Yeah.
and new wave skinny tie stuff. And here we are, a mix between Frank Zappa, Genesis, and Gentle Giant. It's like, what? What are we doing?
Yeah.
In
Yeah. No.
America, that all evaporated. It was still popular, like in the Netherlands and Europe and whatnot. But what I remember is when I was in that band, the bass player, I lived with two other guys, he collected a lot of not very popular in the US prog stuff. And he collected a lot of imports that weren't even available here. But he also collected stuff that was distributed here. And I remember Happy the Man. And my son sent me a couple things to listen to and whatnot. And I just was like flashed way back where I remember saying, this is like Peter Gabriel era Genesis to some degree. Even the voice, I think, to some degree, sounds like Peter's lower, more raspier register. Talk about what it was like being in Happy the Man, the creative process, and how it was received back then.
Well, the timing, for Crafty Hands, that was the album that I was working on with Happy the
Yeah.
Man when I joined them. And it was kind of a strange story because Mike Beck was the original drummer. And interestingly enough, Mike and I were friends back then. And, and the band wasn't getting along with him. He wasn't getting along with them. They wanted it out. And so thank you. Excuse me.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I started working with them only like a week before we went in to record the album. And I don't know if you remember hearing that stuff, but it's a lot of time signatures, a lot of complex, a lot of complex music to learn in that time period. But it was great. It was a great experience. At any rate, but Mike and I were friends back then and have stayed friends, and we always wanted to work on something. So just before this new version of Happy the Man, that's the only thing I can call it, I guess, a new version. But which is very different from the original. But it's got two drummers, and actually, I wish we would have had him here as well, but maybe another time. But so he was the drummer on the first record and kind of the original drummer, and I replaced him on the album Crafty Hands.
Yeah.
But getting back to your original question, that was right at the time when punk and new wave came out. or were coming out. And so right when the record was released, you know, nobody, even though it was released on Arista Records, nobody wanted to hear prog. I mean, it seemed like even the proggers didn't want to hear prog.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, probably not true, but at any rate, yeah. So that was a bad timing for that.
Just a timing thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and different markets, isn't it interesting, Ron, how different markets did evolve at different times? And I'm not necessarily a huge fan of how the US has kind of driven that. You know, there's a lot of music that became more, you know, with the new wave and the hair metal. And I'm not saying that music sucks or anything, folks. I
Right.
didn't like a lot of it then, but I love a lot of it now. I've grown up. But my point is, it kind of drove the market to stuff that was more condensed, simpler, easier to remember, easier to sing to, easier to dance to, and all of a sudden you don't have Suppers Ready anymore coming
Right.
out from different bands, right?
Yeah.
Let alone Smile. So there's, I think, a market for everything. It's a matter of, are you there in that market, and are you getting representation and all that stuff? So it's a complicated matrix that a lot of even musicians, I was going to say music fans, don't understand. But even a lot of musicians breaking through, or who did really well, and then they're kind of being pushed aside over here now because of what does drive the market. And let's face it, there's, I believe, a larger population of people that aren't musos and that want something simple that they can dance to and put on at a party that everyone will know, you know, other than Freebird and Smoke on the Water.
Right.
But what a great musical experience. And how did you like touring that music and playing it live?
Actually, I never did play it
Oh,
live.
really? I didn't realize
Yeah,
that.
because I left the band right after the album.
Oh, okay. I forgot
Yeah.
about that, or didn't realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. So unfortunately, I didn't have the pleasure of, performing live with the guys.
Yeah.
So here we are, how many years later? Actually, we did another live version of Happy the Man in, I think it was 2002, 2003.
Right.
We did in like the Near Fest show and a couple of other things. So I played with them then. That was a bit of a different lineup. It didn't have Kit Watkins.
Mhm.
It did have Frank Wyatt. It had David Rosenthal on keyboards.
Right.
So it was a bit of a different lineup, but we did the same material. So that was really the only time I played live. Now we're, how many years? 20 years now from that. And we have formed again, right? But this time, we're all in separate places, except for actually me and Mike, because Mike's only like 25 minutes from me.
Okay. So a lot of file sharing.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I've never really worked on a project like this way, where you're not in the same room with somebody. Well, except for doing the soundtracks, of course, because I'd work with producers and talk to editors all the time. And then work by myself. So it's more similar to that way of working than actually how you would usually work with a band. So I think, probably has its upsides and its downsides.
Yeah.
The downside is communication is harder because you're working with emails.
And that osmosis of crew.
Yeah.
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 Interesting.
But you're sort of left alone in your own world to kind of create and react to musically, what someone would, that you've worked with, long enough to really know them musically.
Yeah.
So in some ways you don't have to be in the same room because we've been in the same room before. So it makes it easier, I think. So I'll let you know how this goes in about 6 months or so.
Oh, well, that's good, because Steve, Steve, my son, our producer, mentioned that he remembered being told that there was talk of some reissues coming out with new material, but no target date set.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. And I
is
believe
there an
that has
update on
come.
that?
Yeah, and I believe that has went out because we've had our
Okay.
new release, which is Only Love, and then that was to be re-released with the original idea was to release it with these new masters of Crafty Hands and
Hmm.
the first Happy the Man album. I
Right.
don't believe that timeline lined up. I think that we and I haven't been quite as involved in the business and release dates and that kind of thing. So I'm just doing this kind of from memory. But I think that the um, Only Love was released. The other masters are forthcoming.
Cool. Thanks for that. Well, I
Oh, we
want to
just
play
lost
everybody a
a video.
video real quick. Oh, here we are. What? I'm kidding. Um, I want to play everybody a video. This is Smile from Crafty Hands. Let me just pull it up here on the screen.
Oh, so this is Service with a
On
Smile, and I just put this together
Yeah.
today, actually, because I
Oh, that's
thought
cool. Thanks.
maybe, the fans, anybody out there that likes Happy the Band might enjoy that.
Yeah, this is really cool. Let's play this,
I'm,
and then
I,
we'll
I
talk
did it
about the
with,
gear and the music.
I did it with the warts and all. So
Yeah,
it's just one take.
that's cool. Check this out, folks. Turn it up. I love that piece.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that's a beautiful piece. I have a gear question for you.
Sure.
Did
I
you
should
and Yeah, go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead, Ron.
I should say real quick that was a piece that was that was composed by Greg Hawkes. Him and I worked on it together, actually with a band called Waves. Greg is a great friend of mine, and we go way back to Berkeley days. And then, so I was in a band with him called Waves. That band reformed and actually became the Cars,
Oh,
that you know of, and from Boston.
yeah. Awesome. Did you embrace electronic? I don't even know the right term. Plug-in drums. Did you embrace plug-in drums, electronic drums and percussion when it first came out, or did it take you a while?
It took me a while,
Yeah,
and
me too. But I ended up getting my first set of Simmons drums. Remember Simmons drums
yeah,
in
sure.
'83 or '84. I still have them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But those are Rolands, right?
Those are Rolands. Yeah,
Yeah,
those are Roland like
they
Pro.
sound great.
Yeah, they do sound good. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like them a lot. And I mostly got into electric stuff when I was composing because you don't have time to do like a mic setup,
Yeah, get
and
the
actually,
sound. Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
It's literally
it,
turnkey.
yeah, and like each one of those scores that you saw um, on that piece of paper,
Yeah.
they probably a week for a whole score, which is usually about 50 minutes of music.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was like you're at the starting gate. The gun goes off, and
Yeah.
not only does the gun go off, but the gun is held right to your head.
I was gonna say no
And
pressure, right?
yeah, no pressure, and it's like okay, right.
Oh my gosh. So
But
why do
I
people
actually ended up loving that
yeah,
because
working under that kind of pressure? It helped the
yeah,
process for you?
well, it I think that it made me greater than I was. I think that
Oh, interesting.
yeah, I think that it really elevated me having that sort of, pressure because I mean, the show's going to go on. It's like, um, those broadcast dates, they do not change,
Right. You had
and if you
time-based
miss
goals.
one, you will never work again.
Right. That's
It's
some
like that.
pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think in a way it helped, but
Interesting.
yeah.
So here's a question for you, Ron. Why is it that so many people have embraced the electric guitar, the electric bass, electric keyboard, synthesizers, pianos, organs, but so many people have such an issue with electronic drums? What is up with that? And most people are hearing electronic drums and triggers on recordings and they don't even know it, right?
Right. Right. Absolutely.
What do you think the stigma is?
I'm, I think the only thing that I can say about electric, drums in general, it's just there's so many subtleties
Yeah.
to it. Maybe more than guitar and bass. There's just
Yeah.
so many,
Yeah.
and I think that's why it's taken so long for electric drums to kind of catch up. The sounds now are awesome, and not only the sounds that come with it, you can. I mean, I don't use the sounds that come with it. I
Do
use
you
other.
sample and create your own sounds and
Yeah,
augment? Yeah.
yeah. So it's if you're working on a particular piece and you want to change the snare drum, you want to whatever you want to do, you can do it,
Yeah.
and you have choices then.
Yeah.
But I think that it's just the sound. The sound was so bad on electric drums for so long
Yeah. And they
that I
kind
think,
of
and
fit in only one sort of area, you know?
yeah, and the machine gun roll. Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah, for
It's
sure.
like you hear that, and it's like, oh no.
And like you said, the boo, 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 boo,
Yeah.
you know?
Do, 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 do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny. Um, let's talk about briefly Blue Oyster Cult and touring with them. While I show a couple pictures, how did you get that gig? And what was that experience like?
That was just complete luck
Oh,
getting
really?
that gig. Yeah, totally. Because this is kind of an incredible story because I was in Ithaca and the guitar player for Blue Oyster called Buck Dharma or Don Roser, as I know him,
Yeah.
moved to Ithaca, New York. And their kids, Don and Sandy have they had two kids at the time. Well, they still have two kids, but they ended up going to my wife's school. And she had a Montessori school, and they ended up enrolling them in that school. Although that's not how I met him. I got a call like one Sunday, I think it was, and there was this band that needed a drummer, really quick, because their drummer got sick or whatever, and they were doing some sort of weird battle of the bands down at this club. So I said, sure, I'll come down. And so I came down and played this show. It was a lot of Allman Brothers tunes, and I wasn't necessarily that familiar with, and not enough to just go and play it cold. But
Yeah.
and also the sound was terrible, terrible. I couldn't tell whether the band was doing like a shuffle or a straight beat. I mean, it was that bad,
Wow.
right? So I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. I have no idea what's going on. And after the set, I was like, I basically crawled off the stage. I thought, oh man, that sucks so bad. And this little guy comes up. I'm not gonna call. He's a little shorter than me. I'm short, but he comes up and he goes, oh, I really loved your playing. My name's Don Roser. I'm working on a solo album right now, and I'd love for you to play on it and come over and work with me. And I said, okay, sure. And, because I really didn't know who he was.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, I really did not know who he was. And even though I had heard, I definitely heard some Blue Oyster Cult, it wasn't, the music was really in my wheelhouse, but I wasn't that familiar with the music.
Yeah.
So at any rate, that ended up working out pretty well. And in a week or two, I got a call from Steve Shank, the manager of BOC. They were putting a tour together to go to Athens, Greece,
Oh, wow.
Germany, a bunch of other places. And he said, "Do you want to join the band?" And I was like, "Let me think." Yeah, sure.
That's cool.
Yeah.
They give you a whole new set of experiences and everything. Probably when a lot of
Great
places
way to see the world. Great way to see the world. Yeah, yeah. And we go on tour with things like we went on tour with like Kansas and like Germany, and it was so fun to hang with those guys and yeah.
That's cool.
Lots of fun.
Why the drums, Ron? What got you buzzed about playing drums, and how old were you when you first started?
I was about, I'm going to say that I was about 7 or 8 when I started doing lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I was just like my mom likes to say, I was like beating on everything in pots and pans and things like that. They always said that they put drums underneath me just to make it look constructive. But, it was, but I don't, yeah, it was drums. It's always been drums as far as like a performing instrument. At the same time I was playing, learning guitar and trumpet and, played clarinet for a while, keyboards, vibes, xylophone,
Wow.
a bunch of things. And I hope we don't lose battery. So yeah, it was great. It was great.
When you got to Berkeley, is that where you got exposed to formally learning like orchestral percussion and whatnot, or was it more drum set oriented?
No, that was that was orchestral, orchestral percussion and that kind of thing. Fred Buda was my teacher at Berkeley. He was the drummer for, one of the drummers in Boston Pops.
Hmm.
Yeah. And also Alan Dawson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So he was great.
yeah. I wanted to have Alan on so badly. I missed him.
He's still around, is he?
I think Alan passed, I think.
Yeah.
Steve will look it up
Alan,
and text me. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I remember being, I was in an ensemble with Alan. And so there's maybe like 3 or 4 of the drummers and we were going through. And, each person would play. And I'd play something and he'd say, okay, next, and the next guy got, or whatever. And it was weird because he wasn't really teaching me. He was teaching the other guys. And, every time he got to me, he'd go, and he basically said that I was doing my own thing and that, he didn't want to, screw
So
around.
does that mean he approved? It sounds like that means he approved.
That's kind of what I gleaned from that, sort of disappointedly, because I really did want to, learn some of it. But I guess he felt that I was evolved enough in my own style or working on my own style. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that was my experience with Alan. Yeah,
that's cool. We're actually, I'm sorry. We're having a Berkeley teacher on the show on March 27th at noon Pacific. We're having Rod Morgenstein and Andy West as well to talk about the rhythm section of Dixie Dregs, of course. Yeah.
Rod, I love his playing. Yeah.
That's very
Dixie
cool.
Dregs. I love that band. That's a great band.
Yeah, I'm real excited.
Steve Morris, love him.
Yeah, oh yeah, and that's cool because Steve had retired to take care of his wife. He left Deep Purple, and his wife passed, and so it's really cool to see that he's doing that. And I did see an email earlier that I haven't been able to dive into, but more dates were released for their North American tour. So I'm eager to see what those dates and where, because I think the first set they weren't coming through the Southwest, or at least not through Phoenix. As I mentioned before we started, I'm 100 miles east of Phoenix up in the mountains. So I see bands now when they come through Phoenix, or if I happen to be in Vegas or LA visiting some of the kids and whatnot. So we'll have to see, but that would be cool. So I want to move to what we call the Ron Riddle Fun Fact segment. And what that is I want to ask you, when you're not composing, when you're not recording, when you're doing something that's completely unrelated to your work and music, what do you like to do?
I work out quite a bit. I mean, as far as like running and things like that, I mean, I like that. What do I like to do besides music? Well, I turned my place into a wedding venue up in Ithaca, New York. It's called Gratitude and Grace, and it's like this amazing. It really is an amazing venue. It's a barn, because I had this place. This is actually the place that I wrote all those scores at as well.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and my wife died like 11 years ago. And from lung cancer, and I really didn't know what to do with this property. And it's like a beautiful Victorian place with a really beautiful barn. But the barn, we had to just fix it all up from the ground up. But I after she passed, I didn't really know what to do with this. I think I can't really sell it because it would just seem so. I just didn't feel like doing that. I felt kind of disrespectful for some reason. So I put together a wedding venue, made a wedding venue out of the whole place, and people come for like weekend getaways, and people stay in the house, and pool, hot tub, barn.
Could it be used?
Chandeliers. Yeah.
Wow. I'd love to see it. Could it be used as like a retreat or a meeting place or something?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Could be used as a band camp even because the barn is fantastic. I play out there quite a bit, and the acoustics are, it's all that old wood, so it's just like
Yeah.
beautiful acoustics.
That's
Yeah.
cool. And I noticed, thanks for sharing something personal behind the curtain that has nothing to do with music, but I also noticed a lot of beautiful Asian furnishings and artwork. Tell us about that. Is that a region of the world that you're fascinated with, or what is that all about? My wife and I collect antiques and colored glass and some things like that. So I spotted all that and I'm real curious.
This is all about my current wife, Helena,
Okay.
and she put all of this together. Really, I mean,
Wow, it's
she's
beautiful.
just the impetus for all of it. Really, um, and I love it. I think it's she did a great job putting it together,
Yeah,
and you know,
it's gorgeous.
yeah.
Have you been to Asia? Did you ever get to play in Japan or any of those areas?
No, no, and that is my only. That would be probably a bucket list, maybe. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
We were
So,
fortunate to go a few times for Drum Talk TV. We did Singapore 3
oh,
times, but the
nice.
third time we did Singapore was the fall. There's a drum festival that happens there, but the fall of 2019, we also got asked to cover two big taiko events,
Oh,
and we
great.
did two documentaries on taiko drumming. And when we do documentaries, we weave in more than just the music. We cover the food, the culture, the history, the architecture, fashion, things like that. And oh my gosh, Japan is just, everyone's
Oh,
got to go there. It's just amazing. And we got to see two sides of Japan, Tokyo and the very, very rural agricultural part of Japan, as well as the biggest event that we covered was on Sado Island in the Sea of Japan with the taiko
oh,
organization Kodo. And it was just amazing. The most amazing food, people. It's just, you gotta go. You gotta go.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hit me up next time you go, so I stow
Yeah.
away in your
And
suitcase.
bring back some new art and furnishings for sure.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
man.
Very cool. Well, what do you have going on now that you could tell everybody about and where they can find you? And we'll add that to the description in the post as well.
Well, I think that the thing I'm really doing currently uh, is the Happy the Man project.
Great.
So that's really I mean it's time consuming but it seems to be pretty rewarding and coming up with great stuff so far.
That's very
Um,
exciting.
yeah, yeah.
I love
So
that that
that's
music is
really
still
the thing.
relevant, right? The fact that you can make
Absolutely.
that music, that's the best reward
Yeah,
of it all, probably.
it really is.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. I mean, just to continue doing that is a blessing.
That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time to join us and share your experiences and your wisdom. And hang on the line after I say goodbye to the audience. And folks, thank you for following what we do on Drum Talk TV and Yes Shift. Sign up for our newsletter so you get all the info. I believe it got popped into the comments, and you'll learn all about what we have going on in our membership site, where we have live stream concerts, Q&As with artists. We've got a few game shows that we're unfolding real soon, and it's a lot of fun and away from all the distractions and drama and stuff on social media. So thanks everybody, and we will see you soon.